My sister mocked me. Jamie, this dinner is for real family, not adopted extras. My parents laughed. Then the waiter handed me the $3,480 bill. I smiled. Until a woman stood up. You know that gut-wrenching feeling when you walk into a family gathering and your stomach just tightens with dread? Well, mine was screaming that night, but nothing could have prepared me for the sickening betrayal that was about to unravel, meticulously orchestrated by the very people who were supposed to love me. So, there I was, walking into the Mayfair Grill, 15 minutes early, naturally, because that's just how I'm wired. The place reeked of old money, crystal chandeliers glittering, fancy waitstaff gliding between tables of Portland's elite. My anxiety was already buzzing, like always before family dinners. Reservation for Brooks, I told the hostess, trying to sound confident, but my voice probably cracked. She just gave me that professional, polite smile. Of course, Miss Brooks. Your family is already seated. Right this way. Already seated? My heart did a little flip. The invitation clearly said 7 o'clock. I glanced at my watch, 6:45. They'd changed the time without telling me. Again. The hostess led me past hushed conversations and polite laughter, deeper into the restaurant, to a huge round table under its own private chandelier. And there they were, Vanessa, my sister, her back to me, blonde hair perfectly coiffed. My parents, Martin and Ellen, sat on either side of her, like she was royalty. My brother, Ryan, barely even looked up from his phone. Then, at the far end, my grandmother, Margaret Hayden. Silver hair swept up, sharp blue eyes. She was the only one who actually saw me, her gaze assessing, but impossible to read. Sorry I'm late, I mumbled, heading for the empty chair next to Ryan. Oh, Jamie, Vanessa interrupted, her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a knife. The invitation said 7. And besides, this table's for family, not the adopted one. Her words landed like a physical blow, punching the air right out of my lungs. A ripple of laughter, polite and chilling, spread around the table. My father stared intently at his wine glass. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace, lips pursed, but utterly silent. Ryan just kept scrolling, pretending he hadn't heard a thing. Only Margaret's expression shifted, a tiny, almost imperceptible narrowing of her observant eyes. A hot, stinging flush crept up my neck, flooding my face. My heart hammered so hard against my ribs, I swear everyone could see my blazer moving. Each breath felt shallow, insufficient. The surrounding tables quieted, eyes flicking towards us, then quickly away. They'd heard. Oh, they'd definitely heard. I don't understand, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. You all invited me here, for Vanessa's business launch. Vanessa twirled her fork between perfectly manicured fingers. Did we? Must have been a courtesy invitation. You know, like when people say, we should get coffee sometime, but never actually mean it. I couldn't process it. After years of smaller slights, Christmas gifts that vanished, forgotten birthday dinners, last-minute vacation changes, this public humiliation felt calculated, deliberate. A memory flashed, 7-year-old me, watching Vanessa unwrap her third Christmas present while I still held my only gift, a second-hand sketchpad. Mom's voice explaining, Vanessa is our daughter, sweetie. It's different. I was invited here, I said, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. By all of you. A war raged inside me. Should I walk away, salvage what little dignity I had left? Or stay and prove I belonged, despite their cruelty? Even through the shock, the designer part of my brain couldn't help but notice Margaret's jaw was tight, her fingers tapping a rhythm of pure disapproval against the tablecloth. She wasn't laughing. I think I've made a mistake coming here, I said, finally, straightening my shoulders. Don't be so sensitive, Vanessa scoffed, rolling her eyes. It was just a joke. Sit down. Something in her tone, that casual expectation of my compliance, made me hesitate. My whole life, I'd chased their acceptance. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. I took the seat beside Ryan, who finally glanced up, gave me the barest nod, and went back to his phone. Dinner passed in a blur of expensive wine and elaborate courses. I picked at my food mute. My family talked around me. Vanessa's new boutique, Ryan's latest girlfriend, an upcoming trip to Aspen. I was utterly invisible until the check arrived. The waiter placed the leather folder directly in front of me. "Whenever you're ready, ma'am." I opened it automatically, then froze. $3,480. Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "You said your design firm's doing great, right? Consider this your contribution to the family." 5 pairs of eyes fixed on me, waiting. Testing. Even Ryan looked up, his phone finally forgotten. Only Margaret's gaze held something different. Calculation, not mockery. My fingers trembled as I reached for my credit card. I couldn't afford this. The card would probably decline. 3 months of rent, gone, for a dinner where I wasn't even welcomed. But I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. "I need to use the restroom," I said, signing the bill and rising. In the bathroom, I gripped the marble counter, watching my hands shake. The woman in the mirror looked composed, except for the burning flush on her cheekbones, the 2 bright, furious eyes. 22 years of trying to earn my place, and tonight, they had made it undeniably clear I never had one. The bathroom door opened. Margaret Hayden entered, her reflection appearing beside mine in the mirror. "My dear, I saw what happened out there." I stiffened, instantly building walls against pity. Margaret had always been an enigma. Martin's mother, the wealthy founder of Hayden Biotech, more an observer than a participant in their family drama. We'd barely exchanged pleasantries over the years. "It's fine," I said automatically. "I'm used to it." Margaret's blue eyes, so unsettlingly similar to my own, held mine in the mirror. "No one should be used to what I witnessed tonight." She reached into her handbag, pulling out a business card and placing it on the counter between us. "Come see me tomorrow at my office. There's something you deserve to know." I stared at the embossed card, Margaret Hayden, CEO, Hayden Biotech. My fingers hesitated before I took it. "Why would you help me?" I asked, suspicion warring with a desperate sliver of hope. "Because it's time someone did," she answered simply. 10 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late." The next morning, I arrived at Hayden Biotech headquarters at 9:45. The gleaming glass tower pierced Portland's skyline, reflecting the gray, rain-threatening clouds. My throat tightened as the elevator climbed to the executive floor, my reflection in the polished doors looking far more composed than I felt. That $3,480 charge was still pending on my nearly maxed-out credit card. Margaret's executive assistant, a woman with silver-framed glasses and immaculate posture, greeted me with professional warmth. "Miss Brooks? Mrs. Hayden is expecting you." She led me through double mahogany doors that opened with barely a whisper. Margaret stood at a wall of windows, silhouetted against the city. She turned as I entered, those penetrating blue eyes, so unnervingly like mine, assessing me with clinical precision. "Jamie? Thank you for coming." She gestured to a leather chair before her desk. "Please." I sat, back straight, hands folded. Years of navigating the Brooks family had taught me to armor myself with composure. "Your card said 10 o'clock. I prefer being early. But..." "A trait your biological parents shared," Margaret said, settling into her own chair, leaning forward slightly. "Especially your father." Her words sliced through my carefully constructed facade. "My biological parents?" Margaret slid a photograph across the polished desk. 2 smiling faces looked up at me, a bearded man with kind eyes and a woman with my exact jawline. They wore matching engineering jackets with Abbott Technologies logos. "David and Sarah Chen," Margaret said. "Brilliant engineers. And my dearest friends." "You knew them." My voice sounded distant, as if from someone else. "I recruited them personally from MIT." Margaret's fingers traced the edge of the photograph. "They developed revolutionary medical imaging technology. Brilliant minds. We worked closely for nearly 8 years, before the accident." "Accident?" "A car crash. Black ice on the mountain highway." Margaret's voice remained even, but something in her eyes shifted, just for a moment. "You were 6 years old. They'd just established your trust fund the month before." My fingertips hovered over the photograph, not quite touching. "Trust fund." Margaret opened a drawer, extracting a thick folder and placing it between us. $680,000. Every penny they'd saved. Plus their life insurance. Designated specifically for your care and education. The room tilted slightly. I had never known about any trust fund. Because it vanished within a year of your adoption. Margaret's voice hardened as she spread documents across the desk. Financial statements. Bank transfers. Property deeds. Each page revealed another betrayal. Trust documents with my name on them. Transfer authorizations signed by Martin Brooks. Deposits into Brooks Family Holdings. I was 63 when they died, Margaret continued. Too old to raise a child. But my son Martin had just married Ellen. They were starting a family with Vanessa. It seemed perfect. Her mouth twisted. I arranged the adoption myself. And transferred the trust fund to Martin as your legal guardian. My eyes locked on transaction dates that corresponded with family milestones I'd been excluded from. Private school tuition for Vanessa. College fund deposits for Ryan. A Bahamas vacation property purchased 3 months after my adoption. They used me for my inheritance? The question emerged as barely more than a whisper. While sending you to public school and hand-me-downs, Margaret's voice carried controlled fury. And later, community college on student loans. Memories cascaded through my mind, reframing themselves with brutal clarity. The summer Ryan got a new car for his 16th birthday while I took the bus to my after-school job. Christmas mornings when Vanessa unwrapped designer clothes while I received discount store basics. College applications where Martin dismissed my dreams of attending art school as impractical while paying full tuition for Ryan's business degree. Not just neglect. Calculated theft. I forced myself to breathe. To process. Why are you showing me this now after all these years? Margaret leaned back, studying me. Because lately, they've been trying to push me out of my own company. What do you mean? Martin has been working the board behind my back. Her fingers tapped against the armrest. Spreading rumors I have dementia. That I'm making erratic decisions. That I should be removed for my own good and the company's protection. The parallels slammed into me. The same family that stole my inheritance, now attempting to seize Margaret's company. So that's what last night's dinner was really about. Exactly, Margaret confirmed. They needed to establish that you're losing your mental faculties, while demonstrating their loving family dynamic to contrast with my supposed decline. Your public humiliation served their narrative perfectly. The realization made me feel simultaneously more valuable and more used than ever before. Not just the family disappointment, but an actual obstacle in their path to greater wealth. Martin always felt entitled to family wealth, Margaret continued, her voice hardening. He grew up expecting to inherit everything. When I insisted on building something of my own, he viewed it as money being withheld from him. And now? He's desperate. Failed investments. Vanessa's boutique hemorrhaging money. Ryan's startup collapsed last year. Margaret's eyes narrowed. They've already tried to forge my signature on company documents. My stomach dropped. That's criminal. They're working with a lawyer who specializes in declaring elderly executives incompetent. Margaret's calm felt dangerous, like still water concealing an undertow. They're patient and methodical. They'll wait for the right moment. When? The board votes next month on succession planning. Margaret rose, pacing slowly. Martin has been cultivating certain board members for years. Ellen hosts their wives for luncheons. They send birthday gifts to their children. I watched her move, seeing the calculation behind the apparent agitation. This woman built an empire through strategic thinking. Nothing about this conversation was accidental. Why would you help me after all this time? I asked again, needing absolute clarity. You could have told me about my parents years ago. Margaret stopped, turning to face me fully. I made a terrible mistake in trusting you to my son. I believed his promise to raise you as his own. Regret flashed across her features. When I realized what was happening, you were already grown. What good would it do to tell you then? She moved to a small bar, pouring 2 glasses of water. But now, they think they can erase us both. Let's make sure they regret that. The shift in language, us both, resonated deep within me. For the first time in my life, Someone with actual power stood aligned with me against the Brooks family. I have resources, Margaret continued, legal teams, financial investigators, corporate connections your father and brother have never managed to cultivate. She returned, offering me a glass. Thomas Reed, my trusted accountant, has already begun tracing the missing funds. Diana Wallace, my corporate attorney, is prepared to file charges if you wish. I took the water, my mind racing through the implications. Not just a revelation of past wrongs, but an alliance against future ones. Not simply an explanation for my childhood of subtle cruelties, but a pathway to justice. Why would you help me after all this time? I asked again, needing absolute clarity before committing. Margaret's eyes, so like mine, held steady. Because I owe it to your parents. And because it's time someone stood up to my son. I looked down at the photograph again, at the smiling faces of strangers who gave me life, who intended to give me security, whose legacy was stolen by people who claimed to love me. Something shifted inside me, like a door unlocking. I was no longer just the mistreated adopted daughter. I had options, allies, a true history. And for the first time in my life, I had power. A week later, I was kneeling in a dusty storage unit, surrounded by cardboard boxes labeled in my childhood handwriting. My meeting with Margaret had utterly transformed my understanding of the past, turning innocent childhood memories into evidence of calculated exploitation. The key to this unit had been taped beneath my desk drawer for years, a secret even to myself. There has to be something here, I muttered, wiping sweat from my forehead. The August heat turned the metal container into an oven. My fingers left tracks in the dust on a plastic bin marked school papers. Inside, nothing but old report cards and art projects. A gold star still clinging to a faded drawing of what might be our family, for tall figures and one small one, standing apart. 3 hours of searching yielded nothing, until I reached the final box, tucked away in the far corner. Inside, beneath a stack of birthday cards from classmates, but none from family, I found a manila envelope. My biological parents' handwriting covered the front, Jamie's future. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. Inside, photocopies of trust documents, the originals dated 3 months before the car crash that killed them. And emails, dozens of them, between my biological parents and Margaret, discussing the trust terms and her role as executor before Martin's adoption. The trust documents spelled it out in black and white, $680,000 designated specifically for the care, well-being, and education of our daughter, Jamie Elizabeth. Not for vacation homes. Not for Vanessa's private school. For me. I pulled out my phone and captured photos of every page, my fingers trembling with something beyond rage, the first taste of power. Legal proof. Evidence that would force them to see me. Diana Wallace reviewed the documents in Margaret's sunlit office the next morning, her expression growing grimmer with each page. This establishes clear misappropriation, she said, adjusting her glasses. The language is explicit about how these funds were to be used. Thomas Reed nodded, spreadsheets spread before him on the polished conference table. I've cross-referenced the dates with the Brooks family purchases. His finger traced a timeline he'd constructed. Their Aspen vacation home was bought 3 months after you were adopted. The timing aligns precisely with the largest withdrawal from your trust. Margaret watched me from the head of the table, those sharp blue eyes assessing my reaction. You found these yourself? In your storage unit? Yes, I said. I remembered my biological parents kept copies of important documents. I preserved the chain of custody. Everything's dated and photographed exactly as I found it. Margaret's lips curved in the faintest smile. Well done, Jamie. 3 days later, I stood on the doorstep of the Brooks family home, clutching a leather portfolio containing copies of the trust documents and financial records. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, but my hands remained steady. I'd rehearsed this moment for days. Ellen answered the door, her face a mask of practiced surprise. Jamie, we weren't expecting you. Family dinner tonight, right? I asked, stepping past her without waiting for an invitation. I thought I'd join. The dining room gleamed with expensive familiarity, crystal chandelier, mahogany table, set with china that cost more than my monthly rent. Martin sat at the head, Ryan and Vanessa flanking him like courtiers. Their expressions shifted from annoyance to confusion as Ellen ushered me in. Jamie decided to join us, she announced, her voice tight with forced pleasantry. How unexpected, Martin said, not bothering to hide his displeasure. I took the empty seat beside Ryan, who barely glanced up from his phone. I wouldn't miss family dinner, I said, placing my portfolio beside my plate. Dinner proceeded with stilted conversation. Vanessa dominated, discussing her boutique's supposed success while shooting pointed glances my way. I ate methodically, waiting for the perfect moment. It came when Ellen brought out dessert, creme brulee served in crystal dishes. I know what you did with my parents' money, I said, breaking the delicate sugar crust with my spoon. The room froze. Martin set down his wine glass slowly. What nonsense has my mother been filling your head with? I opened the portfolio and removed the trust documents, sliding them across the table. I have the original trust documents and the transfers to Brooks Family Holdings. Ellen paled visibly, her fingers clutching her napkin. Vanessa scoffed, examining her manicure with exaggerated boredom. But Ryan, for once, looked up from his phone, suddenly interested. These could be fake, Martin said, not touching the papers. They're not, I replied. The bank has confirmed their authenticity. Vanessa reached for the documents, flipping through them with growing disdain. So what? You've always cost more than you were worth. The words should have stung, but instead, they confirmed everything I'd come to understand. I took a slow sip of water, savoring the shift in power. Margaret knows everything, I said calmly. And she's helping me take back what's mine. Martin's face darkened. My mother is not well. No one will believe either of you. We'll see who they believe, I replied, gathering my evidence and standing. The board meeting should be interesting. I walked out without looking back, their silence more satisfying than any response could have been. The next morning, Margaret convened a meeting with loyal board members in the Hayden Biotech conference room. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the Portland skyline. I stood beside her, wearing a charcoal suit that matched her own, our similar blue eyes scanning the room. Thank you all for coming, Margaret said. Jamie has something important to share. I presented the evidence methodically, trust documents, financial transfers, the pattern of misappropriation spanning 2 decades. The board members listened with growing concern, particularly Elizabeth Wilson, who'd served alongside Margaret since the company's founding. I've questioned Martin's financial decisions for years, Elizabeth said when I finished, particularly the property acquisitions that seemed unnecessary for company operations. Thomas Reed distributed his forensic accounting report, pointing to highlighted sections. This pattern of financial impropriety extends beyond the trust fund. Martin has been using similar tactics with company resources. For the first time, I felt myself standing not as an outsider seeking validation, but as someone with allies, powerful ones. The corporate battlefield offered clarity that family dinners never could. Margaret stepped forward. Jamie has more business acumen than Martin ever did. She found these documents independently and preserved their integrity like a seasoned investigator. The validation washed over me, not as empty praise, but as recognition of capabilities I developed despite, or perhaps because of, their cruelty. As the meeting concluded with promises of support, a new question formed. Should I push for immediate legal action, or build a more comprehensive case first? Margaret seemed to read my thoughts. Strategic patience, she murmured as the board members filed out. We've waited decades for justice. A few more weeks won't hurt. I nodded, understanding that the storm I'd set in motion was just beginning to build. 2 weeks later, I sat at Margaret's rosewood desk, surrounded by stacks of financial records. Morning light streamed through the bay windows of her home office, illuminating dust motes that danced between us. The methodical quiet felt worlds away from that humiliating dinner at the Mayfair Grill. We need to think like they do, I told Margaret, spreading out color-coded folders. Calculating and patient. Immediate satisfaction won't win against people who've been manipulating the system for decades. Margaret nodded, her blue eyes sharp despite her 79 years. You're exactly right, Jamie. Martin has always played the long game. He's been positioning himself for my retirement since he turned 40. I'd spent the past 14 days studying Hayden Biotech's corporate bylaws until my eyes burned, highlighting succession protocols and board voting requirements. The designer in me appreciated the elegant structure of corporate governance, rules built upon rules, each serving a specific purpose. Diana Wallace, Margaret's trusted attorney, tapped her pen against a legal pad. We're developing 3 parallel strategies. First, documenting the trust fund misappropriation for potential criminal charges. Second, gathering evidence of Martin's questionable decisions as CEO. Third, countering the dementia rumors with independent medical evaluations. The timing is critical, Reed added, his accountant's precision evident in every word. We need everything in place before the board meeting next month. The person I was at that restaurant table, humiliated and blindsided, felt like someone I barely recognize now. That Jamie paid a $3,480 dinner bill out of shock and shame. This Jamie plotted a meticulous course toward justice, toward something that finally felt like control. Margaret slid a folder toward me. These are my notes on each board member, their voting history, business relationships, vulnerabilities. Elizabeth Wilson and James Peterson have always been skeptical of Martin's leadership style. They could be our strongest allies. I scanned the pages, absorbing details about people I'd never met who now held pieces of my future in their hands. And our biggest opponents? Gerald Hamilton and Patricia Davis. Both golf with Martin regularly and have investment ties to his side projects. The magnitude of what we were attempting settled over me. This wasn't just about a stolen trust fund anymore. It was about wresting control of a multi-million-dollar company from people willing to declare their own mother mentally incompetent. Later that afternoon, Reed and I hunkered down in Margaret's library, surrounded by years of company financial records. The mahogany shelves towered around us, filled with leather-bound classics Margaret had collected over decades. We worked in companionable silence, interrupted only by occasional observations. Look at this, Reed said, pointing to a spreadsheet. For acquisitions of small research firms in the past 3 years, all formerly owned by Martin's college roommates from Stanford. I leaned over his shoulder, studying the numbers. And all purchased at significantly above market value. Exactly. Reed's finger traced down columns of figures. The board approved each one based on Martin's recommendation, without independent valuation. While Reed continued his analysis, I examined offshore banking documents, tracing a complicated web of transfers. Ellen's brother, Thomas, appeared on the paperwork for accounts in the Cayman Islands. 3 deposits matched exactly to funds withdrawn from company research grants. We worked through dinner, building comprehensive dossiers on each questionable transaction. Margaret's PR team provided updates on their counter-strategy against the dementia rumors, arranging interviews with financial publications where Margaret demonstrated her sharp business acumen. Diana joined us later, spreading legal documents across an antique coffee table. We're preparing both criminal and civil complaints, she explained. But we won't file anything until we have the complete picture. This isn't about one victory. It's about systematically dismantling their position. The library grew darker as evening approached. Margaret ordered food, and we ate absently, focused on our tasks. The comprehensive approach felt right, methodical rather than emotional, strategic rather than reactive. 2 days later, I was walking to my car after meeting Reed at a downtown coffee shop when I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. And a man with a telephoto lens pointed directly at me. My stomach dropped as the camera clicked rapidly. That night, I returned to my apartment to find the door slightly ajar. Everything looked untouched at first glance, but my designer's eye for detail noticed subtle differences. Papers on my desk rearranged, laptop positioned at a different angle, a file cabinet drawer not fully closed. Nothing appeared to be missing, but the message was clear. They were watching. They were searching. They knew we were building a case. I called Margaret immediately. They broke into my apartment. Nothing taken. But they went through my papers. Her voice remained steady. Move everything important to the secure storage facility Reed arranged. Then come stay at my house. It's time to accelerate our timeline. Instead of fear, I felt a strange surge of validation. If they were scared enough to break the law, we were on the right track. Indeed, Margaret replied. Now we adapt. Reed will arrange counter-surveillance starting tomorrow. I looked around my violated apartment at the subtle evidence of their desperation and smiled for the first time in days. They wouldn't be taking such risks if they weren't afraid of what we'd found. A day before the board meeting, I arranged the manila folders in a perfect row across Margaret's mahogany conference table, each one labeled with a board member's name. Inside each folder rested the same devastating evidence: trust documents, bank transfers, corporate memos, all meticulously organized to tell the story of systematic exploitation. Everything's in place, I said, looking up at Margaret. Legal briefs are filed, but sealed. Diana has the whistleblower paperwork ready for Alan. Margaret nodded, her silver hair catching the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office. The independent medical evaluation came back yesterday. Perfect cognitive scores across all assessments. Reed entered, his normally composed demeanor showing rare excitement. I've secured protection for Alan Thompson. As head accountant for 15 years, his testimony about the transfer patterns will be unimpeachable. I ran my fingertips along the edge of one folder, a habit from my design work when checking paper stock quality. This feels different than confronting them at dinner. More consequential. It is, Margaret said, her voice steady. You challenged them at dinner. Now we're dismantling their entire plan. Diana Wallace appeared in the doorway, legal briefcase in hand. The sealed court documents are filed. One call from me activates everything. I'd spent weeks learning the complexities of corporate governance, succession planning, whistleblower statutes, all while maintaining my design business. Margaret had coached me through board politics, identifying allies and potential opponents. We'd built something far more potent than emotional confrontation, a comprehensive legal and corporate strategy. The PR team is ready too, Reed added. They've prepared responses for every attack we anticipate from the family. I studied the spreadsheet on my tablet, a detailed timeline of evidence collection and strategic positioning. Each completed task gave me a deeper sense of readiness, of growing into something beyond the woman who stood shocked at that restaurant table. Tomorrow the board members get their briefing packets, I said, checking off another item. By Friday, we'll have 7 of the 11 members confidentially informed. Margaret squared a folder with precise movements. We're not claiming victory yet. We're simply ready. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline flashed across my screen. Billionaire founder struggles with mental decline. Family concerned. I thrust the phone toward Margaret. They've gone public. Within minutes, our phones lit up with notifications. Reed's computer pinged with email alerts. Diana stepped out to take a call, her face grim. Martin moved faster than anticipated, Margaret said, scanning the article. He's quoted extensively about my concerning lapses in judgment and their heartbreaking decision to intervene for the company's protection. Reed turned his laptop to show us Vanessa's Instagram post, a staged photo of her holding Margaret's framed photograph, caption reading, "Family comes first." Sometimes loving someone means protecting them from themselves. #eldercare, #family duty. They're positioning themselves as concerned caretakers, Diana said, returning. And you, Jamie, as? She hesitated. As what? I asked. A manipulative outsider exploiting an elderly woman's confusion for financial gain, she read from her phone. My stomach dropped. They're attacking me too. Reed nodded grimly. It's smart. They need to discredit both of you simultaneously. My phone rang. My largest client. After a brief conversation, my hand trembled as I set it down. They're pulling their contract. Said they can't be associated with the controversy. 3 more similar calls followed over the next hour. My design firm, built from nothing through student loans and sleepless nights, was collapsing under the weight of accusations. I stood at the window, staring down at the city streets 20 floors below. Maybe this was a mistake. I'm losing everything I've built. For what? Justice against people who've never cared about me. Margaret joined me at the window, her reflection appearing beside mine in the glass. You've spent your life surviving their cruelty. Now you're going to fight, and I'll fight beside you." Something in her voice, the unwavering certainty, steadied me. I turned from the window. "You're right. We adjust the strategy to include public relations. We fight back." The next morning, I arrived at Margaret's office before dawn. Diana and Reed joined us an hour later, carrying fresh evidence and updated legal filings. "All evidence is secured off-site," Reed confirmed. "Martin can't access or tamper with anything. The financial case is airtight," he added, closing his leather portfolio with finality. Diana nodded in agreement. "The legal team is standing by. Everything is in place." Margaret rose from her chair, standing straighter than I'd seen in weeks. "We have everything we need now." I checked my watch, 7:30 a.m. The emergency board meeting was at 9. That gave us 90 minutes for final preparations. Reed's phone buzzed. He read the message, his face darkening. "Intel from board member Wilson. Martin is bringing Dr. Peterson to the meeting, a neurologist specializing in geriatric cognitive assessment. They're planning to have me declared incompetent on the spot," Margaret said, her voice steady despite the threat. I gathered my presentation materials, sliding them into my leather portfolio. My hand no longer trembled. "Tomorrow we end this. All of it. The path before us is clear. No more enduring humiliation at dinner tables. No more watching these people take what isn't theirs. Today we stand our ground. Today we fight back." "Ready for battle?" Margaret asked in the doorway. Despite the strain of recent weeks, she stood tall, silver hair swept into an elegant knot, her blue eyes, so much like my own, sharp and clear. "As ready as I'll ever be." She squeezed my hand. "Remember what we discussed. Martin will come in confident, thinking he's won before the first word. That's his weakness." Board members filtered in, filling the long table with quiet conversation and curious glances. At precisely 9 o'clock, the doors swung open. Martin strode in with a stranger, a balding man in his 50s carrying a leather portfolio. "Good morning," Martin announced, his voice pitched to carry authority. "Before we begin today's agenda, I've asked Dr. James Peterson to join us." My stomach nodded. This wasn't part of our intelligence. Margaret's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the armrest of her chair. "Dr. Peterson is a leading neurologist, specializing in cognitive decline in older adults," Martin continued, placing a hand on the doctor's shoulder. "He's here at my request, as a concerned son." Ellen slipped in behind them, distributing blue folders to each board member. "A letter from our family," she murmured, not meeting anyone's eyes. "We've been hesitant to bring this forward, but recent events have forced our hand." I watched 12 pairs of hands open identical folders. The board chairman, William Blackwell, frowned as he scanned the contents. "What's this about, Martin?" he asked. A difficult but necessary conversation. Martin moved to the head of the table, directly opposite Margaret. "Mother, we've noticed changes in your behavior over the past year. Memory lapses, confusion about simple matters, difficulty tracking conversations." Margaret's expression remained neutral, but I caught the flash of anger in her eyes. "Quite frankly," Martin continued, "we're concerned about your ability to continue leading this company." The door opened again. Vanessa entered, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a tissue. She took a seat beside her father, her performance of the grieving granddaughter already in full swing. "It breaks my heart seeing grandmother struggle," she said, her voice quavering perfectly. "Last week, she couldn't remember my birthday. The week before, she got lost driving to the house she's lived in for 40 years. Lies. All lies." I gripped my pen so tightly it threatened to snap. Ryan followed, laptop in hand. "Board members, I've compiled some video evidence you should see before making any decisions today." The lights dimmed. On the projection screen, carefully edited clips showed Margaret looking confused at various company functions. A moment where she paused before answering a question. Another where she searched for a name. All normal human moments, stripped of context and stitched together to create the illusion of decline. "Dr. Peterson has reviewed these recordings," Martin said, when the lights came back up, along with our family's observations. The neurologist cleared his throat. Without a full examination, I can only offer preliminary observations. However, these videos display several concerning indicators consistent with early-stage cognitive impairment. I stole a glance at the board. Several members exchanged worried looks. Elizabeth Wilson, Margaret's longtime ally, studied her folded hands. I could almost feel the momentum shifting away from us. I move that we hold an immediate vote of no confidence, Martin announced. For the protection of this company and my mother's legacy, we need to act now, before any lasting damage is done. Chairman Blackwell looked troubled. This is quite sudden, Martin. Perhaps we should, with respect, William. The evidence is clear. My mother needs help, not more responsibility. We can vote today or wait until a public mistake forces our hand. I know which. I prefer. The room grew heavy with tension. This was happening too fast. I caught Margaret's eye and she gave me the slightest nod. I rose to my feet. Mr. Chairman, before this vote takes place, I'd like to address the board. Martin's face tightened. This is a board matter, Jamie. You have no standing here. Actually, she does, Margaret said calmly, as my invited guest and a stakeholder in Hayden Biotech's future. Chairman Blackwell nodded. We'll hear from Ms. Brooks. I moved to the front of the room, my heart thundering against my ribs. Everything we'd prepared for came down to this moment. Before you vote, you should know what this family did to me and what they're trying to do to Margaret Hayden. I pulled up my own presentation. The first slide showed trust documents dated 22 years ago. When I was 6 years old, my parents died in a car accident. They left behind a trust fund of $680,000 for my care and education. Martin stood. This is irrelevant to today's. She transferred that money to Martin Brooks to ensure my future, I continued, raising my voice slightly. Within 1 year, every cent had disappeared into an account called Brooks Family Holdings. Murmurs rippled through the room. The door opened and Thomas Reed entered, carrying a thick folder. This is Thomas Reed, former senior accountant for Hayden Biotech, I said. Mr. Reed has prepared a forensic analysis of both my trust fund theft and, more relevantly, Martin Brooks' financial decisions as COO. Reed distributed his reports to stunned board members. You'll find documented evidence of systematic self-dealing, including kickbacks from vendors, inflated expense reports, and questionable property acquisitions using company funds. Martin's face flushed dark red. These are outrageous accusations. Diana Wallace entered next, her confident stride matching her reputation as one of Portland's top corporate attorneys. This is Diana Wallace, I continued. She's brought medical reports from 3 independent specialists who examined Margaret Hayden last month. All confirm her cognitive function is well above average for her age, with no signs of impairment. Diana handed copies to the board members. You'll also find a sworn statement from Dr. Peterson's office manager, confirming he never examined Mrs. Hayden and was paid $50,000 by Martin Brooks 3 days ago. The neurologist paled, gathering his materials. I should go. Stay right there, Chairman Blackwell ordered, his voice steel. The doors opened one final time. An older man in a rumpled suit entered, carrying a small hard drive. This is Alan Reed, retired company accountant, I said. He maintained backup records of all financial transactions during his tenure, including those Martin attempted to delete from company servers. The boardroom erupted in shocked conversations. Martin pounded the table. These are fabrications. She's manipulating all of you with lies and forged documents. Vanessa jumped to her feet, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She's not even real family. She's just some stray they pitted. The outburst echoed in the sudden silence. Board members stared at Vanessa, several reaching for their phones, recording. The careful, concerned family narrative collapsed in an instant. The videos, Elizabeth Wilson said suddenly. Ryan, you edited those clips of Margaret, didn't you? Ryan's eyes darted nervously toward his father. I just, put together moments that showed what we were concerned about. So you manipulated video evidence to mislead this board? Blackwell asked. Not manipulated. Just highlighted the important parts, Ryan stammered. I took a deep breath. They also tried to forge Margaret's signature on company documents. 3 weeks ago, They attempted to transfer control of Margaret's voting shares to Martin. Diana Wallace produced a thick report. This is a forensic handwriting analysis confirming the forgery. We've already filed this evidence with the district attorney's office. Martin's face had gone from red to ashen. This is all a misunderstanding. We were only trying to protect enough. Chairman Blackwell's voice cut through the chaos. This meeting is adjourned. No votes will be taken today. He turned to the company counsel sitting at the far end of the table. Judge Morrison, given the serious nature of these allegations, I believe we need a formal investigation before proceeding further. The judge nodded gravely. I concur. And I suggest we secure all company records immediately. As security escorted Martin, Ellen, Vanessa, and Ryan from the boardroom, Margaret caught my eye. For the first time in weeks, she smiled, a smile of fierce, vindicating pride. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned, irrevocably, in our favor. 1 month later, I stood at the polished podium, facing the semicircle of board members. 1 month had passed since Ryan's accidental confession, 1 month of final preparations for this formal hearing. The boardroom of Hayden Biotech stretched before me, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Portland's skyline. Every seat was filled, board members, legal counsel, witnesses. Margaret sat to my right, ramrod straight despite her 79 years, those sharp blue eyes fixed on her son. Martin slumped in his chair across the room, his designer suit failing to mask his unease. Ellen perched beside him, fingers constantly adjusting her pearl necklace. Vanessa glared openly, arms crossed over her chest. Ryan stared at the floor, already defeated. Judge Morrison, attending as company counsel, called the hearing to order. This board has convened to address serious allegations against current COO Martin Brooks and to determine appropriate actions regarding company leadership. I took a slow breath, centering myself. The moment I'd prepared for had arrived. Miss Brooks, please present your evidence, Judge Morrison said, nodding toward me. The projector illuminated behind me as I began, my voice emerging stronger than I expected. Board members, what I'm about to share reveals a pattern of deception spanning decades. I clicked to the first slide, my parents' original trust documents. When I was 6 years old, my biological parents died in a car accident. They left behind a trust fund of $680,000 for my care and education. Martin shifted in his seat. This has nothing to do with company business. It establishes a pattern, Mr. Brooks, Judge Morrison replied, firmly. Continue, Miss Brooks. I advanced through the meticulously prepared slides. Bank transfers from my trust to Brooks Family Holdings. Property deeds for vacation homes purchased months after my adoption. Tuition payments for Vanessa's private school. Ryan's college. They stole from an orphan child, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. Then they tried to steal from an elderly woman. Thomas Reed rose next, presenting his complete financial analysis. My forensic examination reveals a consistent pattern of self-dealing by Martin Brooks throughout his tenure as COO. His laser pointer highlighted suspicious transactions, offshore accounts, questionable acquisitions benefiting Martin's college friends. Board members leaned forward, expressions shifting from skepticism to concern to outright horror. The chairman, James Wilson, removed his glasses twice to clean them, as if clearing his vision might somehow change what he was seeing. Diana Wallace followed with documentation of attempted forgeries. We have sworn statements from 3 employees confirming they witnessed Martin Brooks attempting to replicate Margaret Hayden's signature on company documents. These are fabrications. Martin stood, his face flushed. My mother has been manipulated by this opportunist who's never been a real family. Margaret rose slowly, commanding attention without raising her voice. Real family, Martin? Was it real family when you emptied a dead couple's trust fund meant for their orphan daughter? Her voice carried decades of disappointment. Was it real family when you sent Jamie to community college on loans while paying for Vanessa's apartment in Paris? The boardroom fell silent. Margaret continued, each word precise and devastating. My son has spent his life believing he deserves whatever he wants simply because it exists. He believed he deserved Jamie's trust fund. He believes he deserves my company. The evidence before you shows exactly what that sense of entitlement has cost this company and this family. Martin's attorney attempted damage control, presenting medical opinions questioning Margaret's competence, but these withered under comparison with the 3 independent assessments Diana arranged. His financial explanations collapsed when confronted with Reed's forensic documentation. The family's unified front crumbled as pressure mounted. Ellen claimed ignorance of financial details. Ryan mumbled apologies, eyes never leaving the floor. Only Vanessa maintained her defiance, finally exploding from her chair. She manipulated all of you. Her finger jabbed toward me, voice rising to a near shriek. She's always been jealous of our family, always wanted what was ours. The outburst hung in the air, damning in its naked hostility. What exactly was yours, Vanessa? I asked quietly. My parents' money? Your grandmother's company? Or just the satisfaction of making me feel unwelcome for 22 years? Chairman Wilson cleared his throat. I believe we've heard sufficient testimony. The board will adjourn to deliberate. 40 minutes later, they returned. The chairman's expression revealed the decision before he spoke. This board votes unanimously to remove Martin Brooks as Chief Operating Officer of Hayden Biotech, effective immediately. His gaze swept the room. Furthermore, Martin Brooks, Ellen Brooks, Vanessa Brooks, and Ryan Brooks are permanently banned from company premises. Martin half-rose. You can't. The evidence speaks for itself, Mr. Brooks. Wilson cut him off. This company deserves better leadership. Judge Morrison stood. Based on evidence presented today, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for consideration of criminal charges including forgery, financial fraud, and misappropriation of trust funds. The transformation was immediate and absolute. Martin collapsed back into his chair, the color draining from his face. Ellen's hand flew to her throat. Vanessa's defiance crumbled into disbelief. The power that once allowed them to humiliate me at dinner, to saddle me with a $3,480 bill for their amusement, evaporated like morning dew. Margaret rose, back straight, voice clear. As founder and majority shareholder of Hayden Biotech, I formally announce my chosen successor for company leadership. She turned to me, extending her hand. Jamie Brooks has demonstrated not only the business acumen this company requires, but the integrity it deserves. The board members nodded in approval. People who once might have dismissed me, just as my family did, now looked at me with respect, bordering on admiration. Security will escort the Brooks family from the building, Chairman Wilson announced. I watched as 2 uniformed guards approached my former family. Martin attempted one final protest, but fell silent under the weight of public humiliation. They walked out, Martin, Ellen, Vanessa, Ryan, a procession of defeat. Judge Morrison approached after they'd gone. The court will order restitution of the $2.1 million that should have accrued from your trust fund, with interest. He shook his head. Financial fraud of this magnitude carries significant penalties. The following hour passed in a blur of congratulations and planning. The board unanimously approved filing a civil lawsuit against the Brooks family. Margaret's legal team began the process of recovering stolen assets. My transformation felt complete, from humiliated adoptee forced to pay for family dinners to respected executive with a voice that matters. Near the end of the meeting, Margaret pulled me aside, her hand surprisingly strong on my arm. Your parents would be so proud of you today, she said, her blue eyes, so like mine, bright with emotion. Not because you won, but because of how you won. With intelligence, with dignity. I searched her face, finding no trace of the pity I once dreaded. I couldn't have done this without you. No, she agreed with a small smile. But you did it for both of us. My family forgot the difference between inheritance and integrity. You never did. As we left the boardroom together, I realized something profound had shifted inside me. For years, I measured my worth by their acceptance, collecting their slights like painful treasures. Now, watching Margaret walk beside me, chosen family rather than forced, I understood that belonging isn't something you earn through submission. It's something you build through shared values. The elevator doors closed on the boardroom behind us, sealing away 2 decades of longing for a family that never truly existed. Ahead lay something better, a future built on truth rather than pretense, on earned respect rather than demanded loyalty. "Ready?" Margaret asked as the elevator began its descent. I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in years. More than ready. 3 months later, I stood at the edge of Lake Oswego, morning light splintering across the water. Margaret had slipped away peacefully in her sleep, her hand in mine, a quiet end to a remarkable life. The reading of her will surprise no one, but shocked everyone. She left everything to me, the company, the fortune, this lakeside mansion with its sweeping views and echoing hallways. "Miss Brooks." Thomas Reed approached, documents tucked under his arm. "The contractors need final approval on the renovations." I nodded, turning from the water. "Let's make it official." Inside, workers transformed what was once Margaret's private study into the administrative heart of the Hayden Foundation for Abused and Neglected Children. Where Martin once plotted company takeovers, social workers would soon coordinate foster family support. Where Vanessa demanded more than her share, children who never had enough would find resources and hope. "The dedication ceremony is scheduled for next month," Diana Wallace said, joining us in what was once the grand dining room. "We've already received confirmation from the mayor and several state officials." I scanned the renovation plans while my phone buzzed with another news alert. Martin's sentencing was last week, 3 years in federal prison for financial fraud. His designer suits traded for prison denim. Ellen sold their Aspen vacation home at a loss, the Lake Oswego property seized by federal authorities. She lived in subsidized housing now, her social circle evaporating once the money dried up. "Did you see this?" Diana slid her tablet toward me. On screen, Vanessa's latest attempt to rebrand herself as a lifestyle influencer drowned under thousands of comments linking to the viral video of her sneering, "She's not family," at the Mayfair Grill. The internet never forgets. Ryan worked at the Rusty Anchor Now, a dive bar on the industrial side of Portland. I'd spotted him there last month when meeting a contractor, his once perfect hair limp, shoulders hunched as he cleared tables. He pretended not to see me. I pretended the same. "The quarterly reports came in?" Thomas said, changing subjects. "Profits up 18% since the leadership transition. Employee satisfaction scores at record levels." I accepted the folder with a smile. "Let's review them after the foundation meeting." A year passed like water through fingers. The calendar in my office marked 12 months since Margaret's passing with a small silver star. I ran my fingers over it, remembering the woman who changed everything. The Jamie who walked into the Mayfair Grill last year no longer existed. That woman doubted her every decision, hunched her shoulders against inevitable rejection, craved approval from people who never intended to give it. The woman who ran Hayden Biotech now walked with purpose through research labs and board meetings, mentoring young executives with the same steady hand Margaret once offered me. The Montreal team developed something remarkable, I told the board, clicking through presentation slides with confidence that once would have been impossible. Their sustainable pharmaceutical packaging will reduce plastic waste by 70% while cutting production costs. The board members, several new faces I personally recruited, nodded with approval. No one questioned my authority. No one reminded me I didn't belong. "Your leadership style is transforming this company," Elizabeth Wilson told me after the meeting. "The toxic competition under Martin has been replaced with actual innovation." I smiled. People accomplish more when they aren't afraid of being undermined. That evening, my assistant handed me a letter that arrived with no return address. I recognized Ryan's handwriting immediately. "You won, Jamie. Guess you were the only real one among us." I placed it in my desk drawer without responding. His validation no longer mattered. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows as I stood at the podium, hundreds of faces turned toward me. The newly completed Hayden Children's Center gleamed with promise, a modern building with warm touches that made it feel like home. "I spent years begging for a family that never wanted me," I said, my voice clear through the microphone. "Turns out, I didn't need their approval, just my own peace." Behind me, Margaret's portrait watched over the proceedings, sunlight catching the engraved plaque beneath it. Family is built through love, not obligation. The crowd included former board members, employees, community leaders, people who witnessed my transformation from outsider to leader. Not present were the faces that once defined my understanding of family. When the ceremony concluded, I walked to the lake's edge. From my pocket, I withdrew a check for exactly $680,000, the amount stolen from my trust fund so many years ago. The company's attorneys recovered it with interest during the legal proceedings. I tore it into pieces, watching fragments catch the breeze. I used to dream they'd say sorry, I told Diana, who stood quietly beside me. Now I just hope they find whatever emptiness made them cruel. We watched ripples spread across the water, circles widening until they disappeared into the greater whole. Behind us, the foundation staff prepared for tomorrow's first intake of children, while across town, Hayden biotech researchers developed treatments that would help thousands. Margaret would be proud, Diana said. I nodded, feeling the truth of it settle inside me, not as validation, but as peace. Justice served. Legacy secured. Family redefined by integrity rather than blood. The ripples faded. I turned toward home.